The Cleveland Monsters are going to look really, really different this year. But what does that mean? Well, let's discuss on today's Locked On Blue Jackets.
You're Locked On Blue Jackets, your daily podcast on the Columbus Blue Jackets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, welcome to Locked On Blue Jackets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am, as always, your host, Jay Foster, here to give you the good, the bad, and the ugly about your favorite team and mine, the Columbus Blue Jackets. Before we get things started, I want to thank everyone for making this your first listen of the day every single day. Locked On Blue Jackets is free and available on all podcast platforms and over on YouTube. I also have to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. It's not Locked On Blue Jackets today. It is Locked On Monsters. We're going to talk a lot about the Cleveland Monsters, probably a little bit about the Blue Jackets as well, just because they're, the two clubs are pretty intertwined at this point. But it's been a big summer of change for the Monsters. The Blue Jackets roster is not going to look too different this year than it did last year, I don't think. Obviously, there will be some changes, but there has not been a huge upheaval, That is the same is not true for the Cleveland Monsters. They have lost a lot of players. They have gained some players, but I don't know if what they have gained is enough to make up for what they've lost, right? So let's get into it. The Monsters last year were quite a good team. They were not as good as the team that they were the previous year when they won the division. Made it all the way to the Eastern Conference final of the Calder Cup playoffs, but they were still a fine team. Ended up finishing in a playoff spot with a record of 35, 26, 5, and 6. So 35 wins, 26 losses, 5 overtime losses, and 6 shootout losses. I still don't know why the AHL distinguishes between the two in the standings, but the North Division is weird because every team is good. So even though they finished 5th in their division, that still was better than, they'd still be solidly in a playoff spot in basically every other division. They would be 3rd in the Central Division. They would be 4th in the Pacific Division last season. They were a good team. They had their ups and downs. I don't think it helped that they lost, a handful of their good players for large chunks of the season. Obviously, they've lost Jet Greaves at the end there. They lost Denta Patachuk pretty early on. Luka Del Babaluz, they were missing for what, a month and a half. Lots of missing pieces. And I think that is going to show what the Monsters are going to look like this year because they've lost all of those pieces potentially and more, right? So the Monsters have been a team that, for the most part, live and die by their goaltending, right? If Jet Greaves, who has been the starter for the past 2 or 3 seasons, has been, is on it, then the team is usually on it, right? They have been a team that has struggled to score at times. They have been a team that has struggled to defend at times. But Jet Greaves has been, one of the best goalies in the AHL for the past 2 seasons. And I think that's going to be the biggest loss, right? That's the first big change here is how do you replace a starting goalie like Jet Greaves, right? The Blue Jackets don't have a 3rd string goalie right now, or they do. It's Saksochenko, who, in fairness, was very reasonable for the Monsters last season. He had a 900 save percentage and a goals against average of 3 exactly. Only played 27 games. Obviously, Jet Greaves played the bulk of the games for the Monsters last season, but Saksochenko was a fine backup. I do not know if he is the starting goalie for the Monsters, but as of right now, they don't really have anyone else. And I know that the organization is trying to fix that. Obviously, they, way back in free agency, they said, yeah, ideally, we'd like to get a young waivers exempt goalie to be the 3rd goalie. They haven't done that yet. I would assume that they are going to keep trying. Because as of right now, I don't know that the goaltending situation in Cleveland is where it needs to be for this club to make the playoffs. That's the first big thing for me, anyway. Here's the thing: even if you replace Jet Greaves with a starting AHL goalie, like you're probably not gonna get another Jet Greaves, right? Like, if I pull up the season, the season overview, like he had the 5th best save percentage in the league, and the 4 guys ahead of him are not moving. Matthew Murray for the Milwaukee Admirals, I believe, has signed a new deal. Michael DiPietro for the Providence Bruins has signed a new deal. Caden Primo has gone to Carolina to probably start for the Checkers over there. And Colton Ellis, as far as I'm aware, is staying with Springfield, right? Like those were the only goalies that were better than Jet Greaves in the AHL this season. Obviously, there's some names floating around out there, like Devin Levi is the one that I keep coming back to. Dylan Garand, I don't know if he is available. I keep hearing his name being floated. He was very good for a very wobbly Hartford team this past season, the New York Rangers affiliate. But like, you're not going to replace Jet Greaves with a random goalie, right? Like it's about as hard to find a good goalie a good AHL goalie is to find a starting goalie in the NHL, right? Like it's easier technically, but I don't know that it's all that much easier, right? And that to me, like you can replace scoring kind of quote unquote in the aggregate, if you'll allow me to make a Moneyball reference for a second. And we'll talk about, the scoring that they're going to have to replace in a second here, but like replacing Jet Greaves is the biggest task that this roster is going to have to do, and I don't know that they're going to be able to do it. Which means that the skaters are going to have to be better than they were last season if the Monsters don't want to take a step back. However, the Monsters are almost certainly going to take a step back this year, because they lost again. They lost a lot of bodies that I don't think they are going to be able to replace. Like just straight up, like they lost. I think they have like 3 defensemen right now that were on the team last year that are going to be on the team again this year. Like it's a big turnover, and like that's just kind of how the AHL goes. But of the top 6 defensemen for the Monsters this season, in terms of scoring, I'll say, and this I'm counting Denton Matejchuk in this because he finished the season leading Cleveland Monsters defensemen in scoring, despite the fact that he only played 27 games. So obviously he's not going to be there. Stanislav Svozil will be on the team. Damon Hunt needs a new contract. I would imagine he's going to be on the team. Obviously, my guess is he'll probably sign a 1-year. He'll probably sign his qualifying offer, and then they'll be done with it. Samuel Kanazko has gone back to Czechia, signed for a team there. Madison Bowie, I don't believe is under contract anywhere at the minute. And Cole Clayton has gone to the San Jose Barracuda. So there's your top 6 defensemen. Or your top 6 scoring defensemen. If we look at the defensemen that played the most games, we can fold in Ole Julian Bjorkvik-Holm, who played the 6 most games. He re-signed a deal. He's on an AHL only deal, I believe. He's a former Blue Jackets draft pick. So he's going to be back. And also in 7th place, Will McKinnon, who was with Utica for much of the season, joined Cleveland late. He is also going to be back. So, like, if you add in, guys like Corson Kuhlman, who, is hopefully going to be healthy. Guillaume Richard is going to be on the team as well. Luca Morelli is going to be on the team as well. I believe is the plan. Like, they have bodies, but that's a lot of new players coming in. Like, that's, Morelli's going to be a rookie. Richard is going to be a rookie. Like, Kuhlman's, I believe, is coming into his 3rd season with the Monsters. I don't believe this was his rookie season. No, this was technically this was his 3rd season, but he only played 13 games in the 22-23 regular season, so I'm not going to count that. This is going to be his 3rd full season. He hasn't actually played a full season yet. He's played less than 100 games over the past 3 seasons, so like it's going to be a young roster. It's going to be I'm looking at this all of the defensemen that they have under contract right now, and like Damon Hunt might be the like veteran on this team, and he, I believe, is like 24 years old. He is 20. Yeah, he just turned 23. So it's going to be a young defense core, and that's not going to help the fact that, again, you have to, and this is what my big point is, right? Is that if you're going to replace Jet with a weaker goalie, you need to have better defensemen, and the defense I think was a real weakness for the Blue Jackets, for the Monsters this year. That was Freudian. There was a big issue with the defense for the Cleveland Monsters this season, and I think them getting younger is not necessarily a bad thing, but I do think they've lost. Like Cole Clayton, I think is going to be a loss. He was one of those guys that like just kind of shows up and doesn't complain and does his job, right? And there's something to be said for that, about a guy who knows exactly what his role is and excels at it. He's not flashy. He's not going to put up a ton of points, but he is going to be a very good veteran defenseman for this team. And now he's going to go and do that in San Jose. So that's the big, that Knazko is a loss. I think like Madison Bowie, I actually liked a bunch. I thought he was a really underrated defenseman. Stepped up when they lost Matejchuk to the Blue Jackets for the rest of the season. Like I liked Madison Bowie's game. I thought he was fine. But Stanislav Sozil is really going to have to step up for this team. Obviously, there's going to be more guys that are added. Dyson Mayo has been signed to a two-way contract, and I know that two-way contract doesn't mean that they can play in both the NHL and the AHL. It just means they get paid different amounts between the leagues. But I imagine Dyson Mayo is probably going to be with the Monsters for the bulk of the season. Christian Jaros, as well, who came over from Europe, is probably going to be a Monster as well. So like they have bodies. But I don't know that this defense core is better than last year's defense core. And last year's defense core got a little shaky at times. So that's going to be really interesting to me to see, are they going to be able to replace Greaves? And if not, how are they going to be better defensively? Because if they have a worse goalie, they're going to have to be better defensively, even if they want to stay where they are, right? So that to me is the big question, right? The defense is not going to be better. So what are you going to do about the goaltending? Because the goaltending was far and away the biggest strength of the Monsters. I feel bad for the Monsters fans who are going to lose Greaves. I think he's absolutely earned this NHL call-up. Obviously, he's not waivers exempt anymore, and there's no way this team is going to put him on waivers because, they're not stupid. So they have to figure out, okay, well, now we don't have Greaves. Who do we have? Pavel Chayan, who played a bunch, for the Monsters and the ECHL over the past couple of seasons, I believe has also gone back to Europe, so he's not an option. Nolan Lalonde has finally aged out of the OHL. I imagine he's going to go to the ECHL. I don't see much of anything from Lalonde. Like he's probably going to be a perfectly serviceable ECHL goalie, right? But he's not the answer here. Sergei Ivanov is not coming over yet. Evan Gardner's not old enough. Like Melvin Strahl has gone to college. Like they don't have a young goalie in the pipeline, which means they're going to have to figure it out. Are they going to go, they have to figure out whether they want to go and get a veteran or whether they want to try and acquire, again, I go back to a Devin Levi, a Drellin Garant, somewhat like that. So that's the biggest question for me, for the Monsters, is how do you replace Jet Greaves? But there's another equally big question, I think. Maybe slightly less, but not that much less, quite frankly. So we're going to take a quick break, and then when we get back, I want to talk about how this team replaces Trey Wolansky, because that is also a huge loss for this team. So we'll do that in just a second here on Locked On Blue Jackets. First, I'm going to tell you about Game Time. We've all been there, logging on early, waiting forever for concert tickets to go on sale, only to lose your spot for a show that you've been dying to see. Live music should be about making memories, not dealing with the stress of ticket shopping, and that's where Game Time comes in. They make getting concert tickets faster and easier than ever. Prices actually drop as it gets closer to showtime, and you can save up to 60% off with their killer last-minute deals. My partner was in Denver just last week, and they managed to pick up a concert ticket to an Andrew McMahon show basically 45 minutes before the doors opened, and it was super cheap and a great seat, and got full marks from them. So take the guesswork out of buying concert and show tickets with Game Time like we did. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON NHL for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Welcome back to Locked On Blue Jackets, or Locked On Monsters, as we are today. We're talking about the Cleveland Monsters and the big losses that they've sustained, and some additions as well. We'll get to the additions probably towards the end, because we've got to talk about some more losses first. So we've talked about the goalie, we've talked about the defense a little bit. Trey Wolansky has gone to the New York Rangers. I suspect he'll probably play a bunch of games with the Hartford Wolfpack, their AHL affiliate. Which means that the Monsters are going to have to put up with Trey Wolansky scoring a bunch of goals on them, because he was, again, like, he and Jet have been the MVP of this team for like 2 full seasons now, maybe longer. He leaves Cleveland as, I believe, the all-time franchise leader in points, goals, games played, shots on goal. Like, he Mr. Monster, right? That's what they used to call him. They called him the franchise, because that's what he was. He had 60 points in 65 games this season, and that was a down year for him. I get why the organization moved on, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't suck, right? He might have a path to the NHL with the Rangers. I'm not going to begrudge him for going for that. But man, it sucks to lose like your bona fide like star AHL forward. And especially when, again, you don't just like replace a guy like Trey Wolansky. And I don't think this team has managed to replace Trey Wolansky. Again, looking at the guys that they've brought in, like, they haven't brought in someone that's going to put up the points that Trey Wolansky does, right? Like, he, I believe, was top 5 in scoring in the league. He was tied for 7th, I believe, in the league. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Tied for 8th in the league in scoring, right? Like, you don't just kind of get up and replace that. It's gonna be tough. Like, that's a huge loss. He has carried this team through a lot. The other losses, like Rocco Grimaldi, I don't believe is coming back. He might come back on a PTO. Again, the AHL is kind of weird because there are all of these guys that aren't signed right now. And it's tough to kind of look at, like, okay, who's still free agent, who is unsigned, who's where, Rocco Grimaldi, I don't believe, has a new contract yet. My guess is he'll sign a PTO somewhere. Again, he was excellent for the Monsters this year. Second on the team in scoring, had 58 points in 66 games after coming in as a PTO, and I believe played like 3/4 of the season without a contract. So, like, good for him, If they don't replace him, again, that's almost 120 points that 118 points that they're gonna have to replace from somewhere. That's 1 and 2 on the team in scoring. Third place in scoring on the team, Luke Del Belbaluz. He's pushing for an NHL spot. Like, that's gonna be tough. If he makes the NHL, then that's the 1, 2, and 3 top scorers for the Monsters that aren't going to be there. I go back and forth on whether Del Belbaluz is going to be on the NHL roster come October, but I do think that even if he doesn't make the roster, he's going to be the first guy called up, right? Like, that's another 50 plus points that you got to replace that I don't know that they have. Like, again, the hope is that the young guys are going to take steps forward, but I don't know that there are any young guys really that are coming in. Like, obviously the hope is that Mikhail Pucha will keep growing. The hope is that James Malatesta will keep growing. Jordan Dumais had a very wonky rookie season. The hope is that he'll take steps forward. Luca Pinelli, I think they are hoping that there is something there, and I think that there's something there. Like, there are some young pieces, but I don't know that, the 4 guys that I've mentioned, I don't know that those 4 guys will have 150 points between them, or 160 something points, which is how many you would need to replace Fix, Wolansky, Grimaldi, and Del Bell's. And again, that's 1, 2, and 3 in scoring. Look at Double Blues, third place with 53. After that, the offense drops off a cliff. Like, those three guys were doing the heaviest lifting for this team. After that, fourth place has 22 fewer points than Del Blues did, and that's Hunter McCown, who had 31 points. He was fourth on the team in scoring. Now, he, I believe, is still around. Roman Ashan is still around. He was fifth. Owen Sillinger has a new contract. Dylan Gambrell, I don't believe, is going to be sticking around. I don't know that he's gone somewhere else, but he will not be. He won't be returning, I don't believe. Eighth place, Joseph LeBate. He went to somewhere. I don't know where off the top of my head. I had it open and then lost it because, of course, I did. Did he go to the Marlies, perhaps? Where is his name? Went to the Canucks, not the Marlies, the Abbotsford Canucks. So like all of these guys that were on the top 10 on the team in scoring, I believe 1, 2, 3, 4 of them are going to be on the team next season, maybe. Ninth place is Justin Pearson, who I believe is still under AHL contract, but I might be incorrect on that. I also don't believe in my head, I was like, oh yeah, he got traded mid-season. He didn't. He, I believe, is going to be back with the Monsters next season. As far as I'm aware, anyway. And then 10th place is Gavin Brindley, who went to Colorado in that Charlie Coyle trade. So like again, there's 6 of your top 10 scorers gone, including 1, 2, and 3, if we assume that Del Bell's is going to be missing, which again, I kind of go back and forth on, right? Like those are big changes. Those are big losses. And as of right now, I don't know that they've brought anyone in to like address that. I will say that they brought Brendan Gaunt back, traded for Cameron Butler, I believe it was, from the Iowa Wild. Brendan Gaunt's former captain of the Cleveland Monsters, was a big part of the team a couple of years ago. I love that move. Like having Gaunt back will be great. He again brings that veteran presence and also, a not insignificant amount of scoring. I don't think it's really fair to judge him on the Iowa Wild, excuse me, because of how miserable the team was. But he had 29 points in 39 games for them this season, and I believe got a non-zero amount of NHL time with the big club as well because of how many injuries they had. So like, that's a really great addition. That's still not going to replace the points that they've lost, and I don't think they are going to be able to replace that. So like, the Monsters are going to be worse this year. Like I fully think that the Monsters are going to be worse. I don't know that this is the playoff team. I don't have a roster in front of me. I will say that they will also be adding. I just flipped over to Puckpedia. They will be adding Jack Williams, the college free agent that made his NHL debut in the last game of the season, and they will also be adding Oiva Keskinen, who is a young Finnish player who's coming over to start his ELC, has put up very good numbers playing in the Liga over in Finland as a young player. So again, I think that's going to be a really interesting addition. But like really, they're hoping for they're going to need a lot of these young guys to take steps forward, right? Or to have explosive rookie seasons. Like Luca Pinelli is going to be a guy that I'm going to be watching as someone that needs to be a difference maker for the Monsters. I know the organization is really high on him. And also, I want to say that, like, here's the thing. Trent Vogelhuber is an extremely good coach. And if anyone could coach this to make this team more than the sum of their parts, I think it will be Vogelhuber. I spoke to him at the AHL All-Star game, not the most recent one, the 2024 one that was in San Jose. And he was like, yeah, we are a team that's more than the sum of our parts. Like we're a team and not a bunch of individuals, and that's what makes us stronger. And I think he coaches that way. So again, if anyone can drag this team into the playoffs, I think Vogelhuber can. And the thing about the AHL is that there's no way to predict what's going to happen until, the puck actually drops, right? Like the Laval Rocket, for example, were god awful the season before last. They missed out on a playoff spot. They finished 6th in the division. Last season, they won the league. Like they finished with 101 points. Second place was the Hershey Bears with 96 points, right? Like that's wild. That's the kind of swing that you get in the AHL, right? So the Monsters are probably going to be a middle of the pack team next season. And that kind of, again, the North Division is weird because almost 6 of the 7 teams in the North had an above 500 point percentage. The Belleville Senators had a 549 point percentage and didn't make the playoffs. Whereas if you look at the Central Division, the last place playoff team had a 486, which would be tied for last in the North. The Pacific Division, their last place team had a 514 save percentage, which again would not have been as high as the Belleville Senators. And again, the 5th and 6th place teams in the Atlantic Division, which were the 2 last playoff teams, also had worse point percentages than the Belleville Senators, who did not make the playoffs. So like, there's potential, but I'm also like, the North Division is so tough that if the Monsters are anything better than above average, like you're not going to make the playoffs as an average team in the North Division. You just aren't going to do it. The division is too strong. You don't have the teams like, the Manitoba Moose, the Iowa Wild, the Bridgeport Islanders, who were miserably bad this season. I believe they won 4 home games all season. Of their 72 games, they won 15 of them. Like, that's... If you're playing in the Atlantic Division and you play the Islanders, like, 4 or 5 times, then there's, like, basically, that's 10 free points that you're going to get. You don't have that in the North Division. So it's going to be tough for the Monsters to make the playoffs. I'm not going to sit here and say that they're not going to make the playoffs. I don't think they will, but the AHL is weird, and we don't know until, again, there's so much roster changeover in the AHL as well. Like, all of these teams are going to be very different to the teams that played last season, and it's basically, it's impossible to know who's improved and who hasn't, kind of just looking at paper, because the AHL is so weird. Because sometimes a guy just decides to have, like, the season of his career, and sometimes guys that are excellent AHL players take steps backwards. Also, they've got weird rules about, like, veterans and how many veterans you're allowed to play and what exactly constitutes a veteran in the AHL, because it is first and foremost supposed to be a development league, right? So it's supposed to be a bunch of young kids with a handful of older guys showing them the ropes. And again, that creates inconsistencies, that creates surprises, all of that good stuff. So do I know what the Monsters are going to be next year? No. Are they going to be worse than last year? Sure. But that doesn't mean that a bunch of teams around them won't also implode, right? 5 out of the 7 teams in their division make the playoffs. Like, it's, I think 22 or 24 teams of the 32 in the AHL make the playoffs, which is wild. And that's partially because of, like, the division sizes aren't the same. So, like, 6 of the 8 make it in the Atlantic, 5 of the 7 in the North, 5 of the 7 in the Central, and then 7 of the 10 in the Pacific. Like, it's wonky. It doesn't make any sense, but there is a chance. However, there is also the chance that you are a good team that misses out. Like, again, there were 4 teams with worse records than the Belleville Senators that made the playoffs. The Belleville Senators were the 20th best team in the league, and because 24 teams made it, and the Belleville Senators missed out. So, like, the Monsters, I think, are probably going to be in that position of better than a bunch of teams in the Central and the Pacific, and potentially the Atlantic as well, and not good enough to make the playoffs in the North. That's kind of how I think it's going to go for the Monsters. Again, they might surprise me, but I'm not sure. I'm not convinced. Having Delbar Blues will help for them, but I also kind of want him to make the NHL squad. So it's a tough situation. We'll see how it goes. That's kind of what I've got for today. No episode tomorrow, but on Friday we will be back with a new episode of Locked On Blue Jackets. So thank you for listening to this one, making it your first listen of the day every single day. Locked On Blue Jackets is free and available on all podcast platforms over on YouTube. And thank you for listening. I'm Jeff Foster. You can find me on Blue Sky at JKOBFORSTER. You can find the show at LO_Blue Jackets on Twitter. And if you have comments, questions, criticisms, you can email me at lockedonbluejackets@gmail.com. Thank you once again for listening. And until Friday, make sure you stay locked on.